Hello everybody, my name is Kortenko and I am presenting a paper called Negative Effects of Design-Bid-Build Procurement on Construction Projects, which we, together with Professors Koskela, Patricia Tzortzopoulos and Haghsheno, wrote for the IGLC conference. I'm a PhD student at the University of Huddersfield, UK and Innovative Design Lab Research Centre. The construction industry is often criticized for its poor performance. The lean construction community tries to find possible ways of improving the industry through multi-party contractual arrangements. However, traditional design-bid-build, further I will call it DBB, is still the most commonly used procurement system. This study aims to describe DBB procurement and to explore its effects on construction projects, environment, and project participants through a review of existing literature in order to understand the applicability of lean tools, such as the last planner system, in that environment. So what is design-bid-build? There are multiple ways to procure buildings. DBB, also called traditional or stage gate, is a procurement method that imposes a contractual and organizational separation of design from construction. It is a sequential framework and starts with the client hiring an architect to oversee the production process through design and construction. Contractors are employed once the design has been substantially completed, usually by a competitive tender based upon a price bill of quantities. The result of the tendering process is the appointment of a successful contractor, usually on the basis of the lowest price. Then the contractor takes responsibility for the erection of the building. There are no contractual relationships between the designer and the contractor. Why do clients, architects and consultants choose DBB? Competitive tendering has traditionally been favored in construction, especially in the public sector where it is still considered as the best route for achieving efficiency, transparency and equity, as well as preventing corruption and favoritism. The separation of design and construction activities involves a strict allocation of responsibilities and risks among the entities performing them. The lowest price wins mentality remains ingrained because of an industry culture that values tradition and familiarity. The industry is guided by consultants and architects who are understandably averse to the risk of reputational damage and hence avoid alternative procurement methods. Clients remain understandably cost-focused even when alternative procurement methods are acknowledged. Even when clients want to establish more cooperative relationships with contractors, the choice of procurement is not always consistent with their wish. Although DBB seems to be well suited for small and simple projects, it has proven to be inefficient in more complex projects where cooperation is the key. We will show you direct and indirect effects of DBB on construction environment. Flow interruptions are the direct problems which occur after building the walls between architects and contractors. Firstly, unnecessary constraints for subsequent phases are set in the design phase. It means poor consideration of requirements of the next internal customers. Little feedback for specialists, which means poor process transparency and segmented project control. And lack of leadership and responsibility for the total project. When design and construction are separated, there is normally no project leader who is responsible for the whole project delivery. Consequently, the sequential procedure resulting from DBB leads to suboptimal solutions, poor constructability and operability, large number of change orders and thus rework in design and construction, and lack of innovation and improvement. Not exchanging the ideas between designers and contractors leads to "I have been doing it my whole life this way" mentality. Claims and opportunistic behavior are the results of bidding procedures and low margins in the industry. Instead of collaborating and taking collective responsibility for achieving the best outcomes for the projects, the parties tend to seek to maximize their own interests and to transfer risks to their contractual counterparts, which results in endemic claims and disputes. The DBB sets negative incentives, which leads to uncooperative behavior and non-collaboration. There are also the economic origins of the claiming culture. An important element in the contractor's approach is the planning for claims at tender stage. There is a common conflict between the client and the contractor regarding the long-term objectives versus the short-term. In terms of dealing with cost, there is always the pressure to produce profit using either short or long-term strategies. Where the client needs a high value for his project, the contractor is looking for a reasonable profit. To summarize, we are presenting the direct and indirect negative effects in the tree diagram. These effects are overlapping and because of their feedback loops are both consequences and contributors to the construction environment. However, the negative effects of DBB approach on the construction industry can still be grouped and lead to two main problems: flow interruptions and low margins in the industry. Main flow interruptions include the fragmentation of the industry, poor constructability, and others, which lead to several consequential problems. One of them is silo thinking. Low margins lead to the situation that companies are forced to secure their own interests and transfer their risks, which encourages uncooperative and opportunistic behavior. This claim culture leads to lack of trust and toxic environment, well known in construction world. The state of things in the DBB construction environment could remind of the prisoner's dilemma, a paradox described in modern game theory, in which two individuals acting in their own self-interest do not produce the optimal outcome. In the typical prisoner's dilemma situation, both parties choose to protect their own interest at the expense of the other participant. As a result, both participants find themselves in a worse state than if they had cooperated with each other in the decision-making process. Similarly, the decisions of participants in the construction industry are often driven by self-interest and not by a comprehensive success of a project in the eyes of the ultimate customer. One of the reasons for these unwritten rules in construction, the strongest wins and if you don't beat them, they will beat you, is DBB. The possible solutions to overcome the shortcomings of traditional procurement through integrated forms of contract have been widely discussed. However, sometimes it is not possible to use other forms of procurement than DBB. There are legal, cultural, behavioral, technological, and financial barriers against implementing integrated project delivery. We contend that the effects of DBB described in this paper prevent collaboration, which is a prerequisite for lean construction. DBB leads to silo thinking, which derives from the way the contract structure is built. For DBB, it's normal that the parties that start working together have not had the relationships before. A lot of time should be spent firstly to create communication structures. Normally, there is no time for it as the process on the construction site should progress. Without communication channels between them, the parties find themselves in the prisoner's dilemma situation, when they are separated and try to protect their own interests instead of collaborating. But how can we encourage the parties to cooperate? And how do we stimulate open communication under the negative effects of DBB? Can we make it without switching to multi-party contractual arrangements? If we admit that DBB will stay in the construction industry for the foreseeable future, could we change the behavior of construction project participants with lean management tools without using procurement methods like integrated project delivery? Would that influence the industry environment? In social cognitive theory, human psychological functioning derives from the causal relationship between psychological factors, behaviors, and situational factors which operate as interacting determinants that influence each other bidirectionally. It can be hypothesized that if the internal dispositions of project participants can be determined, and the behavior of project participants can be positively influenced, for example, by the last planner system, the situational context in which project participants operate can be influenced too, meaning a shift to a more positive, collaborative environment. Long history of DBB, convenience of choosing the cheapest price and reluctance of the construction project participants to accept the new ways of doing business collaboratively to open cards and to share information with the companies involved in the project procurement leads us to the important conclusion that the traditional procurement method will still be prevalent in the construction world in the foreseeable future, and it does have negative effects on construction environment and creates constraints for the implementation of lean construction, especially less plan system. The practical question arises: can less plan system help to fix the DBB problems, even if the potential of less plan system will not be fully unleashed? Our hypothesis is yes, it can. Thank you for your attention and goodbye.